Coach JT, welcome to the Rattle. Thank you so much for taking time to sit down with us and discuss your testimony and just answer a few questions.
Well, we're glad to be here. And anytime we can share with other people and have the opportunity to maybe impact another person's life, maybe in a time of difficulty as they're struggling with an issue, or just trying to get through life and not sure about direction, or maybe discouraged in some way. If we can do something that would uplift them, we could give them a direction in their life that would maybe help them navigate through the difficult life that we all have to live, and trust the Lord and His plan for their life, then the time is well worth the time and the energy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me give you a brief introduction, and it's come that time in life where I have to wear these. So head coach for John Curtis for 56 years, 640 wins, hold the national record, overall record of 640, 90, and 6, 28 state championships, most in the nation. You had 5 straight from 04 to 08. You're inducted in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, the National High School Hall of Fame, National Coach of the Year multiple times. You were married to your late wife, Miss Linda, for 56 years.
Lydia.
Out
of the Bible, that's okay.
For 56 years.
56.
That's amazing.
It is, and it was an amazing journey. She was an amazing woman who committed her life not only to her Lord, to her family, and through that ministered to so many people as a dynamic Christian and a vocalist that could sing to the heavens. And I know that she continues that same tune when she's in heaven with the Lord.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Y'all were blessed with 3 children.
Yep.
And 10 grandchildren.
Yep. Expensive grandchildren.
Expensive grandchildren. Look, I was hoping once I got my children off the payroll, the grandchildren wouldn't be.
No. Here's what I tell people that have grandchildren: don't plan to retire. Because here's the problem. When they ask you, your first hesitation is what? And your second one is, okay, let's go. That's just the way it is with them. But they're a great blessing. All 10 of them are Christian young people who have made their way in this world and continue to make it. And I'm proud of who they are and what they represent, not only the Lord, but their families and the school that they came from. And they're great young people.
Yes, sir. That is quite the legacy. And most importantly, you're a child of God.
Most importantly, yeah. That was an experience when I was a young man, 12 years old, made a profession of faith. One of the things that I've learned through that process is that at 12, you fully don't comprehend all that means. But there is a drawing of your spirit to that Spirit of the Lord that brings you to this profession of faith. And my brother and I both made a profession of faith at a revival meeting that my dad was holding. And he had never, ever put pressure on us, or even to the point of sitting down with us and trying to make us or trying to lead us into making a commitment. He always felt like that it's a calling, that the Spirit draws you to Him. And so at 12, we made the profession of faith, and it's been an interesting journey, a continuing journey. And the one thing that I will share is His grace is sufficient, because He got me through times where I look back and say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, for the grace that you provided for me. And like any young person, a teenage young person in college, it's a different life, and you get pulled in different directions. And though I never was a person that went off the deep end by any stretch, but it's been a journey, and it's been a growing journey. And the neat thing about it is it continues today. It continues today. I continue to learn and grow in the Lord day by day.
Yes, sir. So tell me a little bit about growing up. How was it?
Interesting. My dad decided to start the school in 1962. And without getting into a lot of details, he was at another school that was involved with the church.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that he was not comfortable with was a lot of come to this church. And he wanted the focus to be on relationship to God through Christ. And we'd worry about church denomination later. And so when he started in 1962, I was a freshman in high school, just finishing. And really at that point had no place to go. And I was playing football and didn't know what I was going to do. And a friend of his that was the intramural director at Tulane said, John, the coach that was at Tulane, our backfield coach, has just taken a job at East Jefferson High School, which is our local public school here. And he said, I think you ought to go meet him. And he did. He took me to the, set up a time, took me, and he went into the office first. And he spent about, I don't know, it seemed like an eternity, probably 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, so.
And what he was doing was saying, I want to know what kind of man you are. I want to know what your relationship to the Lord is, and I want to know how you're going to coach my son, not in terms of football, but how you're going to coach him in terms of being a young man. And so anyway, I ended up at East Jefferson High School, played there 3 years, was a all-state, all-American player there, went on to University of Arkansas and played. And
now I read you were their first all-state.
Yeah, I was the first one.
Yes.
And had a great experience. He was Bob Whitman was his name, and he was not only an excellent coach, a fundamentalist, but he was a better Christian man. A good Catholic, had 9 kids.
Oh, wow.
So at the time, we didn't realize what that meant. But now as I've gotten older, I understand that a little better.
Yeah.
But had a wonderful family, and still I have some contact with him today. He passed away recently. And the Lord had his hand on him also, and the direction that he brought him through life. So I had a great experience there. And then I went to University of Arkansas. I played 3 years there. And the last year, I left and went to Louisiana College in Pineville and played 1 year there. And I got married at that point. And as a result of that, at the time, you don't really fully understand all this going on, because the plan was for my wife and I, my bride-to-be, to come to Arkansas with me, and her dad balked on it. He just did, and he was a Louisiana College graduate, and rather than have the turmoil and the conflict, I made the decision to leave and to go to Louisiana College, and did. And I will say this to you, that the opportunity to play for Frank Broyles at the University of Arkansas was light years ahead of where other people were in football at that time. So the exposure I had there was just unbelievable. The organization, how the program was run, how he made sure that we had all the tools that we needed and the motivations that we needed. And then I went to Louisiana College, and they were struggling. I didn't know they were struggling, but they were struggling. And within a relatively short period of time, the next year, they did away with football. They ended it. So I saw both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I saw what it could be and should be, and I saw a program that had no support. And the powers to be wanted to end it, and found a way to do that. At the time, I didn't understand how impactful that was going to be in my journey, but it was. It was, I think it was initially a difference maker in how I approached things and how I understood both ends of the spectrum. You know, my dad used to say, don't ever forget, the tail doesn't wag the dog now. The school and its priorities are the priority, but this can be a part of it. And how that manifested itself in terms of support and financial support and things that we had to do to overcome some of the obstacles, or really develop the character. And as you know, that's a scriptural basis, that resistance creates, difficulty creates character. And so it was a great experience both ways for me as a young person. And then Liddy and I got married in 1969 and spent that year at Louisiana College. And I guess that blissful time helped me get through. I don't believe we won a game. I don't think we won a game. And I mean, that was coming off of a bowl team.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's
But
quite the culture change.
oh, I'm telling you. And you know, you're going through those first that first year of marriage and the goods and the bads of that and the difficulties of that. But the Lord sustained us through it. Then I came here, and I tell my kids this: it's not where you start in life; it's where you're going to end up. And I tell them the same thing is true in education, because it took me 7.5 years to graduate from college. I left Louisiana College and came here to coach the football team in 1969. They lost their coach. He took a college job. And in that process, I had 9 hours left to take to graduate. So when I went to Tulane to present my transcript, they approved everything and said, well, you got to take your last 30 hours here. And I said, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
All I got is 9.
Uh-huh.
And they said, well, that's a school rule. So I said, well, thank you. And I took off to UNO.
Yeah.
Same thing. Then I took off and I went to Loyola University, and they told me the same thing. So I went from 9 hours to 30 hours. And the only way that I could take them was through the summertime, 6 hours at a time, and in the fall, a night class. So I tell them, it took me 7.5 years.
So you were coaching and going to college?
Coaching and going to school at the same time, yeah. And interestingly, my dad always told us, you're not going to work here because your name is Curtis. You're going to work here for 2 reasons. One is because it's called to, and 2, because you're qualified. He said, you're not going to work here because your name is Curtis. Those 2 things are going to be paramount. You're going to be called as a teacher, and you're going to be qualified as a teacher. So I got it done. And in 1969, opened up with Destrehan High School, the Jamboree, got beat, and didn't win another one for the next 10 games. So we went 0-11 that first year, and I thought maybe insurance might.
Yeah.
Yeah, something had to be better than this. But again, I go back to what I told you a few minutes ago in terms of learning and understanding the process. And I knew that we could go to work.
Uh-huh.
We could provide the opportunity for the guys that we played to get better and to encourage more kids to come out and to be a part of the football team. And that's what we did. And next year had a really good year, went to the playoffs. So it was an interesting journey. And then, of course, the rest of it's history. We sit here 56 years later.
Did you ever foresee you sitting here with?
You know, that's interesting. I get that question about, did you ever think you would win championships? And the answer to that really is no. I really am a day-by-day guy who tries to make a plan for the next day. I never go to the field without a written out plan for that day. I'm talking about individually, each position, each coach, the drills, and what we're going to be doing that day. I never just say, we're going to be in the field for an hour and a half today. You take your guys and do what you need to do. I've always been a person that tried to make sure that we cover the bases, that we cover the fundamental processes. And I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure we do that. Now, I interact with those coaches to make sure that we understand where we are and what we're trying to accomplish. It's not my way or the highway attitude, but the only time I go to the field without a practice plan is the day before the game when we're going through walkthrough, and that's basically special teams. But other than that, every day I go. So I've always been a guy that tries to plan and tried to make sure that there was a plan in place and learn how to adjust that plan to continue to progress. So I think culmination of all my experiences, both in both of those schools, really helped me And I'll give you an example. The first year we got into that summer weightlifting, we had no weights. We had a set of weights from I don't know, like a Walmart at that time. You've seen them, the little small plastic weights. That's all we had. And a fella told me one day, he said, well, you know what I did? I went and bought to the junkyard and I went and bought flywheels. And I said, he said, yeah. He said, I just bought a flywheel and weighed them and I put them on the end of my bars and I lifted that. So I headed to the junkyard and we bought flywheels. And interesting, they were like 37.5 pounds or 32 pounds. And they had the ridges all in them, because they were the wheels that would turn. So I had a dad one day that, and this is 1969 now, and he didn't believe in weightlifting. It's going to make you muscle bound. And of course, the boy had no muscles, so there was nothing to buy. There. But he didn't want him lifting weights. So I said, well, look, can we do push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, dips, things like that? And he said, yeah, you can do all that, but I don't want those weights. I said, okay, that's fine. So he did. And he was getting stronger and better. And I had the idea one day, I said, Alan, I said, look, I'm going to put this weight on your back to give you more resistance, not thinking anything of it. So Alan gets down and he reps out his sets and he gets up and we got up. He had the flywheels imprinted all in his back. I didn't tell him anything and I just told him and go away from But those are some things in those early years that we did. And again, I always try to say to myself, don't tell me what we can't do. Let's find a way to do. But let's see what we can do. It's easy to say what we can't do. Let's see how innovative we can be in order to get ourselves in a position to help us improve and to be a better team. And that was an example. Now, thank God, after that, I was able to get rid of the flywheels and get some regular weights. And of course, we have an extensive program now that is top notch.
Yes, sir. Tell me about your dad. It seems like he was very, very instrumental in your upbringing and structure.
You talk about a man that was God-centered now. I lived in a Christian home and rejected it completely. He wanted nothing to do with church. And of course, his mother and grandmother pulled him by the ear his whole young life to go to church. And was always highly, highly intelligent, very, very bright in terms of thinking through the process. And the thing that I learned about him as I got older and understood is that walls never bothered him. Physical walls, emotional walls, spiritual walls, he found a way over them, through them, or around them. Once he knew this is what God wanted him to do, I'm telling you, it was unstoppable. He was going to see that it did everything humanly possible to get it done. And so he was saved in his life later at 22, found the Lord. And he's told the story many times that he was alone in Memphis at his aunt's house trying to find himself. And he was working at a clothing store in Memphis selling suits. And there were two women in that store that were Christians. And they witnessed to him every day. And he said, no matter what I did, I couldn't get away from it. He said, my mom and my grandmama got me, and I get to that store, and those two ladies were, every day they would say something to me. And one night in just total depression, just total despair, he said, look, he said, God, I know you're there. I've heard about you, and I'll surrender myself to you if you'll come into my life and give me direction. So from that point, he went to Louisiana College and met my mom, and they were married together, and he was into the pastorate. And how he got into the school business was really interesting. He had the opportunity. Now you got to realize this is the late 50s, late 50s, like 56, 57, 58. And he got a call from a friend that was he had at Louisiana College to come to Illinois and start mission churches. And if you think about it, it was a time when Southern Baptists were moving north. And as a result of that, they had no Southern Baptist churches. It was Southern Baptist for a reason. So they decided to expand the ministry. But the problem was you had to be bivocational. There was no money. They would send what they called a home missionary into a community. He would do a survey, get 20 cards of people that might have an interest, and then try to find a pastor to come to start a church. And so he called my dad and said, John, this is what we're doing. And he said, I've thought about you because I know your background. You worked and you've done things in your life to earn a living, and I'd like you to consider coming. He was pastoring in Alexandria, Louisiana at that time, Paradise Baptist Church, still there. And he had my mom, myself, my brother, and my sister was, my mother was pregnant with my sister, Debbie. And he decided to go. And when I tell you, my mom's family went nuts. You're not going with him. He has no security, no job, and you're going to go off to Illinois. Now you got to remember, Illinois in 1956 seemed like 100,000 miles away. I mean, it was like going to a foreign country. And she said, "No, I'm going with my husband." And so we go to Illinois, and he's out visiting one day and inviting people to church. Ran across the man, and they got in a conversation. And the man in that conversation, as we learned a little later, was kind of one of those blunt, in-your-face kind of guys. Not in a bad way, but just who he was. And he said to my dad, and of course I'm paraphrasing, "You sound like you're an educated man." My dad said, "Yeah, I am educated. Louisiana College, graduated Baptist Theological Seminary. I'd like to still have you come to church." They talk a little more. And the guy said, "You telling me you're a college? What are you doing up here, college graduate? I can't pay you anything." He said, I'm going to get another job, and I'll support myself and grow this church. And he said, well, I don't know how you can do that. And what kind of degree did you have, or something of that nature? And he said, "Well, I graduated in Spanish and English in college, and went to the seminary and seminary trained." And the guy said, "You telling me you have an English and a Spanish degree?" He said, "Yeah, so my major. I had a major in English and a minor in Spanish." He said, "We don't have a Spanish or English teacher at my high school." He said, "Would you talk to the principal?" And he told him no at first. He said, "No, I'll probably do construction," something of that nature. Principal called him. He went in and sat down and talked to the principal. And the rest of it's history. That's how we got into education. So when people ask me, how do you know there's a God? I said, well, I've lived it. I've seen circumstances that no one in their right mind, from a logical perspective, would involve himself in. Going into a foreign state, no job, 2 children and a pregnant wife, and knowing this is what God called me to do, with no idea that he would ever get into education. But God was preparing the way. You know, sometimes we want to have everything laid out right in front of us. Just give me security. Let me. Sometimes we've got to take the leap of faith. And that leap of faith should always be that we trust the Lord to give us direction, even though sometimes we don't understand it, why it would happen, how it could happen. God was leading the way. And so that's how we got into education. And as I said a minute ago, the rest of it's history. Started this school. My brother and I were with him. We were driving down Carrollton Avenue. There was a big 3-story building, old, very old, Carrollton Avenue Baptist Church. And this is my dad. Next thing we know, he turns in on Apple Street. And he said, "This would be a great place to start a school." I said, "What?" He goes and knocks on the door. The janitor answers. And he introduced himself. And he said, "Do you mind if I look at your facility?" And The guy said, oh, yeah, I guess you can. So the middle floor was a mezzanine, and then the top floor was where in the Depression and after World War II, they would meet with people to help them with their social services. So there's little cubby holes everywhere. Big top floor. So he contacted the pastor, got before the deacon board and said, I want to rent the mezzanine and I want to rent the top floor from you, and I will redo the whole thing. We'll reconstruct it into classrooms and an office, and I'm going to put a cafeteria in the mezzanine, and the only thing I'd ask is that could I use the auditorium for chapel services. So they made that agreement, and he went to work. He tore the place out, got his brother to help him, got some friends that would help him. They gutted the whole thing and put in, I think it was 6 classrooms and an office with 7th through 12th grade. Got his first student like July the 10th, I think he told me. And I'm going back, I was involved at that point at East Jefferson playing football. Uh-huh. And I think we finished the year with 100 students or 98 students, something like that. And then, and again, the rest of it's history.
Did he teach? He taught?
Yeah, he taught English and was the administrator of the school. Yep.
That's pretty cool. So after you and Miss Lydia were married, y'all came back here. Mm-hmm. You started working and going back to school and all of that. Were there any times where you're like, this ain't me. I need to do something else, or was that calling always there?
I know it was always there. Again, my daddy always felt like that teachers, it was a calling, no different than a ministry calling. Look, working with young people is a challenge. I told a mother the other day, she was walking out of my office and she said, that boy's going to drive me crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, oh, I said, you got one. I got a school full of them just like him. So you count your blessings, okay? And she said, oh, I don't know how you do it and all that kind of. But I think if you're going to really be a teacher, because it's more than putting the assignment on the board and reading out of a book. There's an interaction with students that they read you and you can read them, and you can really make an impact in their life. One of my real concerns in education, by the way, as a side note, is the continuing progression into online learning at the university level, and it's to some degree even at the high school level. I think when you do that, you can certainly get a lot of information, but I don't know if you get the emphasis that you need to get. I will never forget this, and I tell this story all the time. When I was a freshman in college at Arkansas, we had a lady that was the head of the psychology department. And for some reason, I don't know, we didn't know at the time, she ended up teaching a big freshman class. And, it was kind of I don't know, maybe she said, let me go see how the freshmen are. But anyway, she's teaching us. And I will never forget one day she was talking about helping students become successful and how to motivate them and how to work with them. And I'll never forget her expression. She said, you all remember this. Nothing succeeds like success. Nothing succeeds like success. And I realized later in my life, in the last 10 years, that stayed with me because of how she emphasized it. I mean, you could tell by the way she expressed herself, this is very, very important. Now, I could take those same exact words and put them on a screen. Nothing succeeds like success. And I can answer the question on the test and get it right and have no impact in my life whatsoever. So anyway, I think it's a calling. It's something that I think the successful teachers that really stay with it are teachers that feel like they're making an impact in the lives of their young people. So anyway, that's kind of where we were. And again, we mentioned Lydia, but I can't tell you what a positive influence she was. When she passed 2 years ago, the cards and the letters that we got from people that said she made me feel so welcome. She worked here as my dad's secretary, as my dad's assistant, and she was highly organized, but she had a great personality, and so many cards said that theme. Miss Lydia made me feel welcome. When I was floundering, I didn't know anybody, and she would come up to me and talk with me. And at that time, she was also still in the vocal end of her life, although she never quit singing. At that point, she was being encouraged to sing with the New Orleans Opera, Metropolitan Opera here. And she did for a little bit, and she realized the commitment to do that would have limited her relationship in the family and with us together. And so she decided not to do it, to just focus on her church music, her religious ministry with vocalization. Sang at hundreds and hundreds of weddings and funerals and at churches. And so she was just a positive, wonderful Christian woman. And her support was never in doubt. If I have a regret in our relationship, and I share this with everyone that listens, especially men, tell your wife how much you appreciate it. I wish I'd have just told her that. I wish I'd have said to her, thank you for all you do, more than one time. Because when they're gone, you find out how much they've done.
Yeah.
You realize how much they supported you, how they made your life a little easier so that you could do the calling that you have. And I encourage every man that I talk with to love his wife, but do it in a way that she understands also verbally, not just, well, I'll bring home the bacon kind of attitude, but who she is with the little things that she does and did. And so I was blessed. I thank God for, I did last night. I was walking out and I said, God, thank you. Thank you for a godly wife who was such a good mother to my children and my grandchildren and such a support to me.
And 56 years is amazing. It is. I've been married 21, and I mean that I ain't even halfway there.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give as to secrets for a long, sustained marriage like that?
Well, selflessness is a key, I believe. And I think what I have learned is that with time, when we first meet, when I counsel young people that I'm going to marry, I just I went to Houston last weekend to do a wedding for a school family that was, and when I counsel with those young people, I told them when we first meet, it's very selfish. Love is very selfish. He meets my needs. He makes me feel good. And if you found somebody that made you feel better, you're going to leave that one and go to the person that makes you feel better. That's how selfish our love is when we first start. And she feels the same way. You make her feel good. You support her needs at that point. But with time, that changes. Pretty soon, if you stay together and you work together and you pray together and you serve together, pretty soon the agape love that we experience through Christ becomes part of your relationship. And you begin to try to think, what's best for her? What can I do for her? And I think that although our road was never perfectly smooth like any other couple, You go through bumps in the road and ups and downs, but we were committed to make our relationship work, and did. And even through the difficult times, we were committed. And as we get through those processes, that character we talked about just a minute ago begins to really take shape, and you become less thinking about yourself and more thinking about her or thinking about me. Now, look, she was much better at it than I was, okay? She was much better at it than I was. But with time, we got to the point where I knew what she wanted before she even asked. And what I will tell you is that as time goes by, it gets better and better.
And it's fulfilling to be able to fulfill those needs before they ask.
Oh, it's
like,
it makes you feel well. Yeah. Again, it's a biblical principle. I tell this to people all the time. It's a biblical principle that says it's better to give than to receive. It's better to give. You get joy and fulfillment in giving. When you see someone that you love or you care about feeling good about what you've done for them, you're blessed more really than they're blessed. And it's no different than sitting there Christmas Day when your grandchild is 7 or 8 years old and they open that present of something that they did not think they were going to get. They might have wanted it, but their parents couldn't afford it, or they didn't. And you watch them open that present and the expression in their face and the joy in their life, and oh my goodness, your joy goes through the roof. And that's what this agape love is. It's this giving without selfish motivation at all. And it's a great experience. And again, it takes time to develop that. But here's again what I say to the people that I counsel in marriage. It's God's plan. It works. Don't worry about what the world's saying. That's going to fall apart. God's plan works. Just stay with it. Stay with it. Give trust in him and stay with it. It's going to work.
When did the desire to preach?
It didn't. It didn't. Obviously, I had the opportunity to speak at a lot of places, not only athletically, but as a testimony at churches or youth groups or things of that nature. So I was always involved in that kind of ministry. And, as a Christian, I felt not, I don't want to say it was my responsibility, but it was my responsibility to share when I had the opportunity to do that. Not only, and this is one of the things that I've had to really make sure that I stayed focused on, not only with people outside of my community, but making sure that what I share outside of my community, I'm going to share inside with my community, my students, that I'm going to speak with them and testify to them and work with them to say that I would do with somebody that I'm going to speak for. So it wasn't that I was anti being a pastor. It wasn't that somehow I'll never do that. It's just, it never really entered into my thinking, although I was very much involved in sharing the gospel in different ways. Anytime, even at coaching clinics, I would bring in biblical principles because I think they apply to athletics very, very, very distinctly. They apply in athletics. So our church that we attended, we lost it in Katrina, lost everything. And so we broke up as a group, and the pastor that was at the church had a horrible experience in Katrina, almost died, almost drowned. And it really affected him mentally. And he resigned and said, I need to I need the time away. Went back home. And so we kind of separated, decided to go to different places. So I got a call one day at school, and one of the people that attended church with us said, look, I've talked with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and we're just not really happy. He said, could we start meeting together at school on Sunday. And I said, well, yeah, it's not a problem. I said, we can meet in the cafeteria if you want to. I said, we don't have a pastor. He said, well, you do it until we get somebody. Well, that was the hook in this.
Yeah.
And so after about a year or so, they came to me and said, look, we want you to do this full time. We're growing. People are coming. A lot of unchurched people were coming. And I think part of that was that they felt comfortable being in this environment. And I told them, I said, well, let me pray about it. And if we go this direction, I'm going to do it right. I said, I'm going to be an ordained pastor. I will not be, you can get ordained on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find the right website and send your check in.
They'll write you a certificate.
Oh.
Well, we formulated a committee of 5 pastors from 3 different denominations. And we went through a series of ordination meetings and processes and was ordained, and the rest of it's history, as they say. It's been a wonderful experience. Great experience. I tell people, God opens a door and sometimes he'll push you right through it. And it was the best push that's ever happened to me.
Do you remember your first sermon?
I don't. It was such an evolutionary process. Yeah. But because there were times at our church, because my dad was a pastor, and then he was 83, I think, and still very active now. He said, look, I don't have much more to go. We need to get a young man in here that can carry this through. Well, that's when we got the new pastor. And then 2 years later, Katrina hit, and the rest of it, as I told you. So, I had filled in a couple times when he wasn't feeling well. So it was an evolutionary process for me. But what I have learned through it, which I hope, if people get nothing out of this podcast other than this, if you'll just open the book and read it, not the whole book at one time, just find your way to organize yourself to spend time reading the scripture. God will reveal things to you that you did not recognize or realize that will change your life.
Where would you suggest if somebody
probably the book of John, probably for a person that's not saved, person that is seeking the Lord. And again, sometimes I think one of the things that helped me is that, and don't take this wrong, sometimes I think preachers get caught up in preacher vernacular. When they say not saved, that's a hard word sometimes for people to understand. And so what I try to tell them, that when you're searching within yourself and something's not right here, something's missing, I need more than where I am. That's the Holy Spirit ministering to you, to draw you to the Father, draw you to God. And then that commitment that you make to him is what saves us from ourselves. Salvation is about saving us from the sinfulness that we are. And though we don't become sinless, we become less and less sinful if we walk in his path. And that's what the scripture should do for us. Over and over and over again, the emphasis is about love, consideration, kindness, but still deliver the message. Deliver the message that who we serve is God. I think sometimes that we minimize who God is. We say the words, but he is the most high of the high. There are none that could even approach his holiness, or in our terms, his greatness. And I think sometimes we water that down. And when we realize how gracious he is to us, that he provides us a way to have a relationship back with him. Yeah, I use the example, how would you like for the president of the United States to say, come on in and we'll have lunch together and we'll go out and play a little golf and then we'll go to a ball game together and we'll go see a movie together. And yet the president isn't a patch on the relationship that we can have with God. And that's what he desires from us. He desires a relationship with us in a very personal way. And I think that message is so important to get out to people. And so in my presentation of the scripture, through my reading, my understanding, not only have I grown, but I think it has given me the ability to share it with people maybe in a little different way, out of the traditional vernacular that we use, but never losing the message.
Yeah.
Never understanding. Look, it's not easy for people to hear you're a sinner. I don't care who you are. It's not easy to, especially if you're a good person.
Yeah.
The problem is we're a good person in relationship to each other. We're not a good person in relationship to the sovereignty of God. We can't be. And that's the relationship that we want to try to build. And that's why he provided that path for us to do that, so we could.
Yeah, because those guys are a lot harder to reach than the ones that have hit rock bottom.
Oh,
because
no
the ones
doubt.
that hit rock bottom,
No doubt.
they understand. The ones that are living the quote unquote good life. I don't drink, I don't gamble, I go to church. I'm good. I'm checking all the boxes. Those are the ones that are really hard to. But you're still a sinner, and
you're in need of God.
Yes.
Look, I say convinced. I know this. There's an emptiness without God in your spirit, and I think good people try to fulfill it all the time with stuff, good stuff, maybe even service, but there's an emptiness there. There's a hole that only God can fill, and he provided a way for us to be able to fill it, and that was through his son and through the death on the cross and the sacrifice that he made, so that we wouldn't have to make that sacrifice. All he wants us to do is to enter into a love relationship with him, and that was that agape love, that selfless love. God's example to us was selflessness, was off the charts. And once I think we begin to understand that, and once we begin to preach that from our pulpits, and people begin to understand how selfless God was for us, then I think it opens up a door for us to begin to think about our relationship with him. And that's the way I try to approach it. I didn't have the privilege of being seminary trained and learning, but I have tried to study through this process as I have grown in more detail. And it's been a great journey. I wouldn't trade it. People ask me all the time, how do you do all that? Yes. I said, because it's not really work. It's not really work. It's a blessing to do it every day.
Something I wanted to ask you about. So, and I've got it written down because I don't want to mess this up. About your coaching philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You had said you viewed coaching as a ministry, emphasizing character development alongside athletic excellence. Was this something that you started out with, or was this something that evolved over time?
That coaching was a ministry?
Mm-hmm.
I think I always could articulate that, but it has grown to be more meaningful with time.
How so?
Because I've seen the difference in kids' lives, that we have impact on children's lives that we have no idea we're impacting, because they watch and they see everything we do. You cannot fool kids. They see right through you. And I always tried to be, I always tried to make sure that they understood about our relationship to God and how important it was. And as time has gone on, you realize how impactful that can be in your life when they come back and they tell you, I can't thank you enough, or thank you for helping me find the Lord. Thank you for leading me to, and I think it's a growing process. And it's much more powerful now, and I'm much more aware of it. And I say now, over the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, whatever it would be, where you realize everything you do, they see and hear it. And so I'm on guard for that. And if I mess it up some way, I'll call them in and tell them, look, I'm sorry. That was not the way I should have done. And that's not what God wants us to be or do. And my dad's whole thinking in terms of ministry is, again, a very simple biblical principle that I think we lose sometimes, is that we are to plant seeds. We are to plant the thought in the mind of a young person. God will take care of the harvest. We want to sometimes see the harvest right before our eyes so we can feel like we've done something. And we're making an impact. You're making an impact one way or the other.
Yeah.
Just try to plant seeds by how you talk, how you act, how you dress, how you interact with young people. I think all those things are very impactful. And I think ministry is more than what you say. It's more about what you do across the board, whether you're the lead pastor in a big church or whether you're a lay person that just loves the Lord and out there working in your job at the factory or at the plant or whatever it might be, that people see what you do more than what you say. And so that's what I mean by it's a ministry. And it's an ongoing, everyday process. And I will say this to you, it's a great way to live your life.
Yes, sir.
I tell people all the time, I said, look, it's a great way to live.
Yeah. One of the guys I listen to a good bit, he talks about, you talk about the harvest and planting seeds. And he said his thoughts, what he imagines getting to heaven and meeting people that you had planted the seed, but never
had no idea.
No. And he said, what a blessing that would be.
The problem with us is that we just don't, again, I'm going to say, we don't open the book up enough. We don't open the scripture every day. Jesus talked about that continuously. Just plant the seed, minister to people, give the opportunity to minister to people that others won't minister to. You know, over and out. And again, I read just the other day where the Pharisees were criticizing Jesus for associating with sinners. He's eating dinner with the sinners and tax collectors, of all the bad people in the world. And of course, the tax collector was a Jew who had turned against his people.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be among them. I'll tell you this story. My dad had the opportunity to be on a board at a Christian school, and there was a debate whether to bring in a teacher that was not a Christian. They were of a different, they were a Muslim, is what they were, but an excellent teacher. And he said, wait a minute, hold. What is the debate? We got a faculty full of Christians. One Muslim, we can't influence one Muslim with our life, with how we conduct ourselves. to show them another way. And I think we do that sometimes. They're not like us. That our responsibility is to continue to minister to that, not necessarily in a verbal way that would cause confrontation, but in a way that they would begin to see, boy, he's different.
Have you had to change your approach over the year? With the message stays the same,
Yeah,
but your approach with the kids?
a little bit. Yeah, you do, because of how things evolve. You know, I told somebody the other day, I said, if you'd have told me 20 years ago we would be selling jeans with holes in them for more money than the jeans that are put together correctly, we'd have all looked at you like there was something wrong with you. Now, you talk about an evolutionary process. They buy jeans today that are ripped and think it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore it is cool. Somebody created that and it's become the thing. So yes, you do have to change your approach, but the needs are the same. I tell this to people all the time. If you teach them, if you discipline them, they'll know you love them. You can't say, I love you, and don't take the time to discipline or to teach. And that's the key. They will know how much you care about them by the way you teach them and the way you discipline them. No question. So my point is that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Now, how you approach it might change. Okay. I'll give you an example. We had, they play the music. Now, that's a big thing before the games. And there was a song that was played that had the bad words bleeped out of it, which it got snuck in on us. We didn't realize that's what it was until it was going. But instead of saying the bad words, they bleep them. Okay, because the beat of the music out. Okay. And I met with the team. It was a girls' basketball game. And I told them, I said, listen, I said, I just don't think y'all are whores. I don't think any of y'all are bitches. And they looked at me and I said, well, that's what they're saying. I just can't support that. I said, I think more highly of you than that. I think you're good young people. You're good people. And that's what I mean by a different approach.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, they hear that in all of their music. I shouldn't say all of it. A lot of
it, yeah.
And I can remember my mother telling me, turn that radio off. I don't want to hear that rock and roll music. I mean, it's nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we have evolved into degrading information, degrading people. And I think that if you don't point those things out to them in a very direct way, how are they ever going to know? And I told those young girls that, and of course they agreed. They did. So we've eliminated that, and I understand they like that music. I like my music, and I tell them all the time, I said, you go to the movies, you never hear that. You hear all my music is being played in there.
So, I mean, there's undeniably the success you've had on the field. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask a few questions about football and your coaching career. So tell me this: when you decided on your offense,
mm-hmm.
How? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When the first year I coached, I tell you, being naive has got a lot of benefit to it. It really does. It really does. So the first year I coached, I put in the split back option, DeVere. because that's what they were doing at the University of Houston. And at Arkansas, I was a part of an experiment of how that would work. And they took our defense out on the field and they said, we just want you to react to what happens. And they were running the option a little bit and see out. Because this was brand new stuff. Never heard of it. Well, so that first year, I tried to run the option. We wouldn't have been successful. It didn't make any difference what we. I mean, we had no talent, and I was so naive. I thought for sure, okay. So I junked that after that first year, and we went to the I formation and had success with it and did well with it. And then in 73, we went to the state quarterfinals and we lost to Notre Dame of Crowley in a game that we could have won. And Notre Dame went on to win the state championship. And it was the first time that I realized that I had set the standard way too low. I am not a goal setter. I am an achiever. I never want to put a limitation on what we can do. I want to see what we can do. And goals have a tendency to do that. So we were in the I formation. And then 74 came along. We still had a good team. And we went 3-3-3. And it was the first time that I had come across the drug issue. And I was in the gym after the season, and this boy that was an offensive guard, he told me, he said, Coach, he said, couldn't understand the quarterback. He was smoking that dope. I went, what? What are you talking about? He said, Coach, you know, those cigarettes that I had no clue. So I got together with the coaches and we did some talking around, and we realized that was infiltrating, not just in our school, across the board. Now, again, you got to remember, we're talking 74, coming out of the 60s and all of that. And now it's infiltrated and it's worked its way down. And we said at that point, we're going to find guys that want to play ball and guys that don't want to play. And we went at that point to a very strong off-season running program. And the idea was, if you're going to be on this team, you're going to have no time to do that. And if you do, you're going to be throwing up every day. So we started that running program, which was and still do it today. Still, if you're not playing baseball, you're not learning track, you're working with our guy outside in the running program about 4 days a week. And then in that process, we realized that we had some talent that maybe we could, we didn't have a tailback type of player. We had a bunch of guys, we had about 4 guys that were running backs, but they weren't really tailbacks. And so that's when we decided to go back to the veer, go back to the split back veer. And we coached it hard during that off season and realized that there was some real benefits to it and have never changed. We've certainly added to it. Mm-hmm. We certainly have added more into the passing game and things, and Jeff has brought that with him. My youngest son, who calls the plays and does all that now. But we're still an option team because of what it gives us, the advantage it gives us in terms of what defenses can play. When I would speak, I tell them that I know what you're going to be in defensively, because you've got to account for the dive, you've got to account for the quarterback, you've got to account for the pitch on both sides of the ball. So I can tell you where 6 guys are going to line up every game. And if you don't, then, you're not going to stop us.
Yeah, it's gonna be a short game.
Yeah,
because
they're not going to stop us. So anyway, that's kind of the philosophy, and we went to that in '75 and have, evolved but the same plays, the kids that called the plays in '75 call them in '26, and do in the stands, and do. I get that too. I don't know why we ran it. We should have run it.
Yeah, no, because I run across y'all's live feed on Friday night, and this past year was y'all's 50th anniversary of the 75 team.
The 75 team, right?
And they were talking about that, and it's funny that you mentioned that about calling the plays. Even the radio or the live stream announcers, they'll call, well, that was such and such and everything.
One of them was the wide receiver. Kevin was the wide receiver, and then Danny was quarterback. Danny played at quarterback, and just 2 years ago, they broke his passing records at University of Memphis where he played. So yeah, I said, Danny, just don't say that before the game, okay? At least they don't get it.
So what's been, football related wise, what's been one of the most memorable memories that you have?
Certainly that 75 championship was. Again, it
did it validate what you had thought?
One of my coaches said this. He said, Coach, we better win next year. I said, no. He said, because the way we work on them, if we don't, they all go quit there. None of them going to go through this. We're not going to. And so that 75 championship was special. We didn't have a college player on the team.
Really?
We didn't have but we had some good players that played hard and were smart kids and really did some good things. But through the years, there have been good teams. The '85 team with Mike Stonebreaker was on that team, who was All-American at Notre Dame. That guys like that were on that team was a powerful team. In the '90s, we had some teams in the '90s that were really strong and good. The '06 team. I'm not going to say it was the most talented team. That would not be right. But the '06 team was really good. That's the team that we took to Hoover and beat Hoover in Hoover, Alabama. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
Hoover was doing that 2-a-day program, and they were.
Yep, it was on ESPN.
Yeah, ESPN. Oh,
and everybody. Was that a Friday night game?
Let me tell you what happened. We get a call. They couldn't have a game. And I had an open date the same day they did, and it was going to be the opening game of high school football for ESPN, and they wanted to get Hoover because of all the hoopla with the what they call, I can't remember, 2-a-days, I think they call the show. Anyway, so we said, yeah, we'll go play. Well, we ended up beating them. We ended up beating them 28-14, and but that was a good football team. And Joe McKnight was on that team, and I'll tell you a quick funny story talking about teams. Reggie Dupart was an All-American here and went to SMU, was an All-American SMU. He played in the '82 team. And he came to a game later when Joe was a senior, and Joe broke a run and I don't know, 40, 45-yard run, and he gets knocked out of bounds on the 1-yard line, and of course we score, and he's coming off the field, and Joe's jogging, and Reggie's standing right there with him, and as he passed it, he looked at Joe and he said, "It'll never knock me out on the one, Joe." Said, "Oh my goodness, boy," and Joe turned around, and but there have been some really good teams and some really good players, and our guys really relate to one another, and I think that tradition is really important, that they realize they carry a legacy, not just for themselves but also for those that have played before them.
Yeah,
and make a difference.
No, the name definitely triggers a thought, because coming from North Louisiana, you always heard John Curtis, and then when you get to actually see y'all in action, it's like, holy smokes, because first quarter it's like 7-0, maybe 10-0 at halftime, but come third quarter, it wearing them down, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 42-0, and you're like, how did we get there from here? So,
like you said, the thing too that's helped us is that we've been able to maintain a lot of stability in our coaching staff, and a majority of them have played here, so they know what we want to do. But the challenge to that is to continue to be innovative, but not to try to be creative. There are no touchdown plays. There are execution plays. And if we can execute, we got a chance. But because I get coaches call me about, can I come visit kind of spring training? And they're welcome. But I tell them, I said, look, before you come, now understand this. I have no touchdown plays. I said, I can help you with execution, about how we try execute, what the answers that we have for what you're doing defensively or offensively. But it's a matter of execution, not plays.
And you've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but what advice would you give a young coach that wants what you have philosophy-wise, where they're wanting to be instrumental in a young man's life as far as pointing him to Christ, but also having...
They go hand in hand. You can't separate it. But your priority should always be your example, but your responsibility is your job. You have a responsibility to do your job to the best of your ability. And what that means is that you have to be willing to grow in the profession, and you need to be willing to work in the profession, and to try to accumulate within yourself as much information as you can related to your position or what you do, in order to be able to work to be the best that you can be at it. Coaching is work, and it's a continuation of work. I'll give you an example. My first relationship with Pete Jenkins was in 1980, and he was first stint at LSU. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you, but anybody that's in football that knows defense and so forth. And he and I are close personal friends. Every time we talk, we eventually get into football. And every time that I'm around him, I learn something new. I hear how he expresses about a technique, or how he expresses the importance of how he teaches something, and I absorb that and apply it to what we do. And the point that I'm making is that you never stop growing and learning. And the second thing is that if you're thinking about punching the clock, you need to go do something else. You really do. Because there's no way that you can justify, unless you're Lane Kiffin and making the 13 big thing. And Lane and I I know Lane for a long time. I'm sure he realize I'm joking, but the time that you're going to put in is going to be consuming. But I also think that you got to be smart enough to know that there's an important time to be away. I try to make a 24-hour rule somewhere after we play on Friday. And unfortunately, we don't always get to play on Friday in our community, but that we find 24 hours away from football. And I don't care when that is. The coaches can do it differently. You can work Saturday afternoon and stop, and then come back Sunday night if you want to. Or I meet a lot of times. We'll meet because several of my coaches have sons that are playing in college. So we'll come in at 6:30 on Sunday morning, and I'll work with them from 6:30 to about 9. Then I'll leave to get ready for church for 11, and they'll finish up, and then they'll come back Sunday night. But they got time away.
Uh-huh.
I don't think there's a football God that you have to honor, but there is a responsibility that you have to meet to be prepared, and to be ready to go out and to teach those young people what they need to do to give them a chance to be successful. And again, as I said, I think it's a teaching process and an educational process that you commit yourself to making sure that you're doing all that you can do, but still know that it's not 24/7. It doesn't need to be 24/7. But when you do it, you need to do it well, and you need to be focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's biblical too, because we had a discussion. Well, I had a discussion with both my kiddos talking about the Bible talks about working, and your work is for the Lord, and no matter, regardless of what you're doing, whether it be ministry wise, church wise, or you're out in the world holding a job, you're still holding that banner. You're still holding that banner. Oh, well, that's a Christian.
That's right.
And you should be.
By what you do.
Yep.
You don't have to say, now, just bow your head and pray before you eat lunch.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to make a deal out of it. It can be 15 seconds, but people see, or how you address a person. The way we speak today in our communities, it's just amazing to me how we've allowed ourselves to let the vulgarity sleep into our everyday vernacular. In the business world, men in suits and ties. But you don't have to speak that way. And people will notice that.
Uh-huh.
They'll notice how I lost a coach who was a dynamic Christian man. A man named Mike Roberts was our offensive line coach for years, passed away with cancer 5 years ago now. And I told people, even in his anger, when he was upset about something, he never lost his Christian witness. Even when he was mad, there was something different about how he was mad. That's it.
Yeah.
That's ministry. It's better than preaching from the pulpit.
Yep. There's a saying along the lines of some Bible, the only people will only read will be your testimony or something, or your witness.
That's right.
And
what's the old saying? It's not what you say, it's what you do.
Yeah.
Tell me how you do, and we'll see.
One question I'd like to ask everybody that we interview and get their testimony. When it's all over, and looking back, and people hear your story, hear accolades, both on the field, off the field, what do you want them to take away?
I would hope that they would know that I tried to be fair in terms of dealing with players, and that's a challenge. Now, you have to understand that in football, let's say you have 22 that are on your starting team. Well, all those other guys want to be in that 22. And so that fair business comes in to play, especially with parents. It's not fair. My son doesn't have a chance. It's not fair. You give him the opportunity. I want people to know that I've always tried to be fair across the board from an athletic standpoint. I hope from an athletic standpoint they know that we did all that we could do to prepare and be prepared to go out and perform it to the best of our ability. And that I think there's a carryover. Even sometimes when kids don't get it now, they will later. I, I think there's a lot of merit to be involved in a team that works toward a goal. Because I said it, I think it sets the tone for them being involved in a family that works together to set a goal. That's not going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect. But we work together to achieve the goal. I hope that they gain that from an athletic standpoint. And most importantly, I hope they would look back and say, he set the example as a man, as a Christian man. He didn't preach at us, but he lived it every day. And that's what I try to do. Now, I'm going to be honest and tell you, I'll fall short. I do fall short. But as I said, I think when we started, God's grace is sufficient. He says it's okay. You know, I tell this to my pastor friends, and I might have shared this with you. I think one day we're all going to stand before the Lord, and he's going to look at us and say, oh, y'all messed that up bad. I don't know how in the world y'all got that out of the scripture, but it's okay. You've forgiven. I know you were working hard at it. And I think sometimes we undersell God's grace, that he is able to forgive us and able to continue to move us forward if we'll just trust him and just walk in a path that will allow ourselves to do that. And I hope kids see that. And you know, again, they have to understand that doesn't mean that everything is wonderful. Doesn't mean that everything is nice. It doesn't mean that I don't get upset with you, or that I yell at you, or that I get put you down, or whatever, how they would view whatever. But the overall picture, they know, they understand that this is the way I hope I can live my life, and that you set that example for them as a Christian.
That's good. That's good. Again, Coach JT, I cannot thank you enough for sitting down. I know your testimony absolutely will reach guys and reach men and walk into doors that may not be open with other men. And so, again.
Yeah, I hope that. And let me say to you that it's anybody that would hear this, if they have a question or a concern, just call John Curtis Christian School and get me on the phone, and I'm more than happy to visit with you. Because the issues that we're talking about are about eternity.
Yes, sir.
When I tell this story that when I was a freshman in high school, we were playing the University of Texas at Fayetteville, and we were driving through the community one afternoon or one night, whatever it was, and the First Baptist Church in Fayetteville had the old kind of board, you know, they'd put Sunday school at 10.
Yeah.
And he had this saying on it that I read as a freshman in college, and it said this: physical things are temporal. Spiritual things are eternal. Nevertheless, be Texas. And I think that was a tremendous statement of life.
Yeah.
We have to live every day, man. You know, we have to live every day, but the spiritual things are about eternity. But while we're living this everyday life, you know, we have to compete, and we have to do the best we can, and we have to define the Texases in our life that we have to overcome and defeat. And but remember that these spiritual things are about eternity.
Yes, sir. Do you mind closing us in a word of prayer?
We'll be glad to.
All right.
Let's pray. Father, we come to you thankful for the Dry Bones Ministry. Thank you for Jeff and willingness to travel and to take his time to visit with others and have experiences with you that might minister to a person somewhere out there that is seeking and searching within himself to find you. Even if they don't know what they're looking for, they're really seeking the God, the sovereign God of the universe. We thank you that you cared enough for us, that you sent your only son to pay the price for us, that we wouldn't have to, that through just simply trusting you, that we can have all things become relevant in our life that would manifest itself in our life in a way that is so uniquely different than what the world has to offer. We ask you to help us to continue to grow in your word. We ask that you would help us to continue to support each other in our Christian walk. And we ask you to be with those that are in time of need. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, partner.
Yeah, thank you.